based on the man you know, is Donald Trump, when he says things like fire and fury, is he imitating sort of a, I don't know, sort of an autocrat that he thinks an autocrat would be, or does he really mean it?
It's very evident that he deeply would like to be a dictator.
I'm joined now by Brian Klaas, a fellow of comparative politics at the London School of Economics and the author of that new book I just mentioned, The Despots, Apprentice, Trump's Attack on Democracy. It is out today, and you just got in from London today, so thank you for being here tonight.
My pleasure.
What is your thesis?
Well, that Donald Trump is aspiring to mimic despots. He is not a despot. He's a democratically elected president, but he's behaving like one. He's attacking the press. He calls them the enemy of the people, which is rhetoric that you usually hear from people like Mao and Stalin. He's harsher on the press than he is on actual despots committing mass atrocities. He's politicizing the rule of law, which is a precursor to authoritarianism. He is violating ethics rules, making a mockery of democratic ethics. And he's filled the White House with cronies, generals, and family members. These are things that you do not see in the United States. And they're eroding democracy by violating democratic norms, the soft guardrails of American democracy. And that means that that corrosive effect could last long beyond Trump, because it's poisoning the system. And that's why I think we need to see these red flags for what they are, which are things that I am used to seeing in other countries in sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, where I've done field research and lived under authoritarian regimes. These are the types of behaviors that Donald Trump is mimicking in the White House.
How do you explain, in a contrast between him and other autocrats, that he doesn't seem to have an end game or anything that could be called a consistent political ideology?
Well, so one thing that I've realized studying despots is they don't have to be effective to be destructive. And Trump is not effective, but he is destructive. And very often the autocrats and despots you study around the world are bumbling idiots. They make mistakes. They are not always.
But they often have ideologies.
Yes.
I mean, the worst autocrats in history of World War II had ideologies.
Yeah. So if we're talking about the truly awful autocrats in world history, their ideology was married to a destructive force that didn't check them in any sort of way. There are a lot of despots around the world who have similar traits to Donald Trump in terms of a cult of personality, narcissism, and they don't have a strategic endgame. They're impulsive. People like Gaddafi in Libya, for example. Erdogan in Turkey is much more strategic, but he's behaving in ways that look like Donald Trump in the sense that he intervenes in political investigations, corruption investigations. He fires prosecutors, and also he tries to attack the press. So, you know,
right.
There's
and
a lot of
Turkey's also the country accused of trying to bribe Mike Flynn. You want to talk about that? Yeah. Here was Hillary Clinton today talking about dictatorship.
If they send a signal that we're going to be like some dictatorship, some authoritarian regime where political opponents are going to be unfairly, fraudulently investigated, that rips at the fabric of the contract we have that we can trust our justice system.
Hillary Clinton is right about this. And I've seen politicization of rule of law in places like Belarus and Thailand, where I've lived and done work. And it's ugly. It destroys the system. It makes everybody distrust the government. And I think Americans falsely believe this could never happen here when we have all the warning signs. And they're not just things that have just cropped up. We saw these warning signs 2 years ago. We saw them in the Democratic debates when Trump said, "You would be in jail if I become president." And now he's starting the steps that would go down that road, despite the fact that there is no evidence. And Jeff Sessions is acknowledging that there's no factual basis for a special counsel. There are still calls for one. And Americans don't jail their political opponents simply because they're the political opponents.
Right. And all you could say about it is he said he'd do it. He did warn. It's whether people take him seriously. Most voters chose somebody besides him. But we have a funny system where the person who comes in second becomes president sometimes. And we're living in that era. Brian Klaas, thank you for telling us about your book, The Despot's Apprentice, out today.